My name is Caleb Rice. I'm a graduate of Lawrence High School, year 2000, Lawrence District 55 High School, year 2000. Currently I am serving as the Health, Safety, and Environmental Director for Integrated Power Services. To give a little bit of glimpse about what we do, Integrated Power Services is now a multinational global service provider for industrial electric motors, generators, and electrical distribution across the entire North America, and we just recently added Newcastle, England as well, so we're global. So what that basically means in the real world is that customers have industrial electric motors, industrial electric distribution equipment, and they can send it to any of our 92 brick and mortar operations across North America and England to get fixed, to get repaired, to get tested. But we also have about 700 field service employees, which means these are folks that actually leave their houses and they go out to these customer locations and they perform the work on site. So it's a really interesting but also infrastructure critical business, because if you think about any manufacturing environment, any process driven environment, you got motors turning them, you've got generators, creating power, and you've got electrical distribution sending everything everywhere. So whether you're at BMW, whether you're at the local Ingalls, there's going to be little parts to everything that we do in all of these areas. With that, what we've done is we've grown significantly from about $250 million in revenue 8 years ago to over $1.2 billion now. And so being able to manage that change has been a significant challenge that we all welcomed. And I think that what you'll find as a recurring theme is, what I think has helped in my success is the ability to be resilient and to accept challenges as they come versus shying away from them. I consider myself extremely lucky. I grew up with two parents that loved me and my brother unquestionably and unconditionally, as we will learn a little bit more about as we go through this interview. But I had a very nice middle class upbringing. I had a mother that worked for Palmetto Bank back when they used to be a thing, and I had a father that worked in the industrial construction sector. And so they both gave my brother and I, everything we could ever ask for, from comfort, protection, all the way to providing us with everything that we needed. And so with that, I think that it's important to point out that both my parents were very influential on who I became as an adult, despite, a lot of my youthful irreverence, I think is an appropriate word. Despite me, as they would describe, being very stubborn, being very hard-headed, and knowing it all, they always were there to kind of keep me grounded, keep me going in the right direction. And when I made mistakes, to help support me through, but make sure I learned from those mistakes, and there were plenty of them. I honestly owe everything to my mom and dad and my brother, who was also influential in my life, and particularly being one of the biggest encouragers I ever had. I knew that when I was facing adversity, facing difficult challenges, I could get on the phone with my brother and he could help me through it. And he could help me to learn and adjust and adapt to what I needed to in order to be successful in whatever situation. So I really look back at my life and I feel like it's a charmed life, as a blue collar family growing up in the middle class, and I couldn't have asked for any more than what I was given as I grew up. So a couple anecdotal stories is, it didn't take long to kind of realize that I had, a propensity for sports. I want to encourage every young person, please don't just pigeonhole yourself into a single sport. Get some opportunities to play different sports year-round and create, athleticism as opposed to just being as part of a single sport. So for me, growing up, I would play everything from baseball, football, basketball, even into high school, track and field. And once I got to high school, there was a realization I had a real opportunity to play college football. That's where I really started to narrow in a little bit more mentor on high school football. And so basically what I became there was, football during the season and football conditioning in the off season, but I also did track and field events with shot put and discus as well. I wasn't running the 400 meters. That wasn't going to happen. But again, I just think it helped me to be more athletic as opposed to just being stuck into that one sport. So once I realized that I had an opportunity to potentially play college football, I really set my sights onto that. And my parents made me a deal. They said, if you are going to be doing the things that are potentially going to get you a college scholarship, we're not going to make you work. And that's all I needed to hear. I was like, I don't have to go be a bad boy at Ingles. Nothing against being a bad boy at Ingles, but I don't have to do any of that stuff as long as I'm doing the things I should be doing. And that was my first glimpse into being process-oriented as opposed to outcome-oriented. And what I mean by that is, if I was just focused on the end result of being a college football player, it may not have lent itself to the structure needed, right? So my parents, very forward thinking, were not like, are you going to be a college football player, and just putting that outcome or that carrot at the end of the stick, right? Instead, they said, you've got strength plans, you've got conditioning plans, and there's targets inside of those that your school is giving you, that you need to do 30 minutes of this every day. You need to go here every day. My mom would take me to the YMCA in Lawrence, and I would do aerobics in a class full of 30 women. But that's what I mean by process oriented. My parents, even though that seems to be more of a newer age term, I really learned about that with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, trust the process. My parents were instilling that into me, and it's like, we're not waiting until graduation to find out if you've got a scholarship. Instead, we're seeing what you're doing. Are you putting your actions into place, or your words into actions, and actually doing and taking the steps to achieve what you want your end goal to be? And so through that, and of course, through mistakes and things like that, it did lend itself to an opportunity where I was recruited and ultimately signed a scholarship to go play football at Gardner-Webb University in Bowling Springs, North Carolina. They were a Division I 2A, or now it's called the Football Championship Series. And so I played there for 2 years. But I think it's important to note at this point that if anybody that knows me is going to be watching this, they're going to know that I was not the model student. I certainly made a lot of mistakes in growing up, certainly paid for a lot of consequences of those mistakes growing up. And so with that, despite those mistakes, I still kept working hard in order to get that opportunity to play college football. And I did that. And so quite honestly, I think the only thing that saved me and got me through high school was my ability to play football. And it certainly wasn't because of my love of school. It certainly wasn't because I was making good grades, and it certainly wasn't because I had good behavior. I think I tested every single line that you could possibly test when it comes to being a good student and a good kid. But there were people at Lawrence High School and in the community that did see there was potential there, and they did not define me as the mistakes that I made. And so through that, I still had the support, and ultimately got to walk across that stage in 2000 and graduate. And so I think, much to the relief of my parents, now was the opportunity for me to grow up and the opportunity for me to take my football game to the next level. And so that's when I enrolled and went to Gardner-Webb. As a 17-year-old, I was always extremely young for my age. I was always like a year younger than everyone else. So when I reported to Gardner-Webb, I was still 17 years old. And that was my first realization that I went from, these are not my words, but I'm just saying in general, I went from being a big fish in a small pond to now being a big fish in a pond full of bigger fish, right? So that was really the first light bulb moment of This is adversity that I can't find a shortcut out of. When I was in high school, I figured out mechanisms to try to get myself out of the sticky situations I found myself in, and I found that I was pretty good at that. And so when I went to college, I realized that wasn't going to work. And I realized that now that I'm playing football I'm just now an average person on that football team, so I can't let football get me out of the sticky situations, because I'm just another guy at this point as a freshman in college. And if I'm not doing the work for good grades and things like that, well, football's not going to come to my rescue. I'm not a 5-star talent. So that was a really hard lesson for me to learn, and it ultimately resulted in me parting ways with Gardner-Webb University. And it was a mutual parting of ways, because again, through high school, I had not learned my lesson. I had not grown up. And so when I separated from Gardner-Webb University, I had to really humble myself and go to summer school back in Lawrence. And I went through summer school at University of South Carolina Union at Lawrence, and took a few classes to replace, because when I left Gardner-Webb, I had a 1.9 GPA. That is the result of not going to class. That is the result of not paying attention. If you go to class, you can get a C. There is no reason to walk out of a college with a 1.9 GPA. But I had not learned, I had not grown up, and I wasn't mature in any sense of the word. And so that was ultimately because of me, because it certainly wasn't because of my support system, who was encouraging me, who was giving me good advice, who was telling me the things I wanted to do, but they weren't the things that I wanted to do. And so when I left Gardner-Webb and went to summer school to replace some of the classes in order just to get to a 2.0 so that I could transfer schools to the University of West Georgia, I went through, basically an entire summer and semester, replaced some classes, got up to like a 2.2 GPA, and was able to enroll in the fall at the University of West Georgia, go Wolves. And I was able to enroll there in the fall and started spring football practice at the University of West Georgia. And that whole scenario and situation and experience was the light bulb moment for me. That's when I realized that I had been skating through on either talent or ability to talk my way out of situations, or whatever the case may be. I've been skating my way through and just getting by, just barely, until the point when I went to college that didn't work anymore. And that's when I realized, is this who I really want to be? Do I really want to take every lesson that my parents and my brother and my family and my support system has given me? Do I really want to take all these opportunities and just throw them away to continue being just another guy? And I really decided, no, that's not who I wanted. So I enrolled at West Georgia. I lettered my 3 years of remaining eligibility in varsity football. So as an offensive lineman, started every year. And then more importantly, what I'm the most proud of is that I was able to get my GPA, my cumulative GPA in graduation, up to a 3.2 from a 1.9. And that is something that I will forever be grateful for, and that nobody ever gave up on me. And it would have been so easy to say, man, this kid, he doesn't have it. This kid's not going to go anywhere. He's not ever going to learn. And man, quite honestly, I probably would have thought the same thing too. But through the circumstances and through the intervention of those that I care about and that care about me, I came out on the other side a much better person that learned and grew from those experiences. And so when I graduated, several times Dean's List awardee with a 4.0 GPA, I'm extremely proud of that. And so what I hope the key takeaway is here is that, quite honestly, the most important thing that is come out of this entire experience for me, what has set me up for success in the rest of my life, is resiliency, learning, and growth mindset. Because I didn't have any of those things in high school and in the first couple of years of college. I wasn't resilient. I was always asking my parents to get me out of trouble or trying to talk myself way out of trouble or anything like that. I took challenge as it's too hard. I didn't know what resilient means. And so through those opportunities, and when my parents finally said, you're on your own, you've got to do this yourself, and that light bulb finally went off, that's when I began to accept that if I want to be the best version of myself, then I've got to do the things, I've got to create the process to be the best version of myself. And what that process looked like was being curious, wanting to know people, wanting to learn from others' experiences, and wanting to learn in general. My goodness, if I could go back in time right now to high school or college, I would soak those things up, and I would love it. And there's proof to this, because everybody can look in hindsight and say, oh, if I could go back, I'd do much better. At 38 years old, I enrolled at Clemson University to get my master's in business administration. I'm doing this while working a full-time job that involves travel, while being married to my wonderful wife, Lindsay, while having a 9-year-old, or at that time 7-year-old daughter, Amelia, and at that time 1-year-old son, Bennett. I enrolled in Clemson in their MBA program, and within 3 years I graduated with an MBA. And that is entirely due to being resilient and understanding that challenges are things we should welcome and embrace, and being curious and always wanting to continue learning. And now I sit before you as someone who was on the verge of never being able to step foot into a college again, possibly on the verge of being expelled from high school, that I am a college graduate with a bachelor's degree in psychology. I am a grad student, or a graduate with a master's degree in business administration. And it's all because of those cumulative experiences that led up to this success. So again, when we talk about resiliency and challenges, I don't think that there's a better mentality to have than to look at challenge and embrace it. And so what I mean by that is every single day, circumstances are going to present themselves to you. In those circumstances, you're going to have to make decisions. And your decisions are, do I accept this or do I fight against it, right? And so naturally, we might want to say, well, I'll fight against it, but that's not what I mean. Fighting against whatever circumstances present themselves to you basically means you are not accepting the reality of the situation that you are placed in. Acceptance means accepting the reality of the situation that has presented itself to you, because only then, when you accept that reality, can you then make the decision of what you're going to do next. And really, there's only a couple of different options once you accept the reality of the situation you're in. You're either going to say, okay, I can live with this. You know, it's not ideal, but it's the situation I'm in and I'm okay with that. Or you can work to try to change it. And you could say, I don't like this situation. Here is the definitive structures or frameworks or plan or actions that I'm going to take to change the situation I'm in. Or you can leave the situation that you're in. Those are your three options. And so until you actually accept the reality of the situation you're in, you're not going to be able to make any valuable changes. And so when I think about accepting the situation of the reality, and I always love to tell this story because I think it's important. So in 2021, we're now a year into COVID, and we find out that we're going to be blessed with my youngest son, Bennett, and really getting excited for all of that. About 6 weeks before my wife went into labor, I had been exhibiting some odd behavioral symptoms, medically related. I was having trouble kind of standing. I was dizzy a lot. I was having headaches a lot, and having a lot of problems. And then finally, I was just like kind of trying to push through it. We were wondering if it was vertigo. I went to doctors and all this kind of stuff. And then finally, I walked into an ER in Greer, South Carolina, and I said, please do a CAT scan. So they did, and they found that I had a tumor on my brain. And thank God it was non-cancerous. It was a benign tumor, but ultimately I had to have brain surgery about 3 weeks before my son was born. So you want to talk about resiliency. This isn't a story about me. I was never worried. I was honestly never worried because I felt like things were just going to work out. I was optimistic and I felt very comfortable with my surgery. But now imagine you're a wife that's 3 weeks away from giving labor and your husband is laying on a hospital bed going through brain surgery. And I cannot speak enough to the calm stability that my wife offered through what I know internally was probably pure chaos. But she harnessed that and coped with that because she accepted the reality of what we were facing. And she said, okay, what can I do to control this outcome? And she separated out the things beyond her control, and she accepted the things that were within her control and had an action plan. And lo and behold, went through surgery, everything went great, everything's still good with that. And 3 weeks later, we had a son, and I got an extra 3 weeks of paternity leave because the doctor wrote me out for 6 weeks. But by 3 weeks, I was feeling pretty good, and I was able to help around the house and all of that kind of stuff. So I think, again, the emphasis there is just, we can't control what we can't control, but we can control everything that's within our control. And until we accept the reality of the situation we face, that's the only way for us to determine what's the course of action. So my name is Caleb Rice. I graduated from Lawrence District 55 High School in the year 2000. Once a Raider, always a Raider.